All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm gonna give it just a second to let some folks drop in. But thank you for joining us for today's sponsored speed dating. We're gonna be talking today with Desire to Learn and TopHat about things that are going on and things that may be of interest to you. So I will go ahead and pass it to Ken Chapman from Desire to Learn. Ken, you got 15 minutes, take it away.
All right, hello everybody. Let's speed date. So my name is Kenneth Chapman, I'm from D2L. We're the makers of the Brightspace LMS. So if you're familiar with Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle, we provide a similar platform. So not a lot of people know who we are necessarily. We've been around for about 20 years. So I wanted to share a little bit about who we are, what makes us tick, and the things that we think are important as we're building out learning platforms to deliver modern learning to really diverse audiences. So first and foremost, like I said, we've been around. We're a global company. There's over 15 million learners that use Brightspace on a day-to-day basis. 20 plus years we've been around, same owner, same mission, same sort of passion that we have for trying to transform teaching and learning. We operate out of 40 countries, so we're a global organization. The platform's translated into 15 plus different languages, and our employees and our customers are all around the world. So we follow the sun with support. We've got offices out in Australia, UK, South America, and in Asia as well. One of the things that makes us a little bit different as a learning management system platform provider is we don't necessarily look at a learning management system for education, for K-12 and for higher ed. And we didn't think it necessarily made sense to just build a learning management system for corporate learning. We decided to build a learning platform that supports all kinds of different forms of learning, whether it's mastery-based, traditionally grades, non-credit, adult learning, self-paced. We built a platform where we really wanted to think and focus around human beings and the individuals that are involved. So Brightspace is actually used by my 6-year-old daughter. She uses it she's a non-reader, she's in there. It's a very natural sort of interface for her age and appropriate. In high schools, colleges, and universities, there are very different ways that we can configure and stand it up. And then we have a really strong and large body of corporate customers that are using Brightspace for upskilling, reskilling, customer and partner training, and lots of things in between. So it creates a lot of opportunities for us to think about people and individuals, and not so much about systems and the classroom and just bringing those things into an online sphere. It helps us think a little bit differently. As a company, we feel like we have a lot of expertise, and we really tout the power of partnership. So we do a lot when we're working with customers to meet them where they are. And because we have a platform that's as flexible as it is, it can deliver, professional learning and development and PDU type scenarios, more traditional blended and fully online and competency-based models. We meet organizations where they are. We help with them in building a launch strategy. For those organizations that really want to see the art of the possible and to uplift what can happen in a learning environment, we have a huge amount of expertise in creative services and multimedia development, instructional design, to help really take advantage of some of the things that might not be unlocked potential in your content, how you engage students, and how you create opportunities to continuously improve your process around student success. So when we think about how we build a platform, how we build services as a company, empathy is critical, especially when we're dealing with such a wide audience, as I talked about before. So we do a lot of work to understand, are we building the right thing? We run advisory boards, we do usability research, we run prototypes, we do early access programs. Are we solving the right problems? Are they gonna fit into somebody's day-to-day life? And then are we building the thing right? Is it actually solving the problem it's meant to solve? Are we helping with supporting the change management to get all of the different faculty or learners or administrators on board and using what we think and have designed to be a valuable feature or function? We take a ton of input from our customers. So we have something called PI, the Product Ideas Exchange. And that's where our customers go in and they vote on and give us ideas on where the product needs to improve. Sometimes these are things like overhaul your quizzing engine and improve that. We did it, by the way. We were asked to do that a couple of years ago. We're rolling that out right now. It's awesome. But sometimes it can be those little tiny ankle biters, those things that people run into 5-10 times a day, that if we just rounded the corner a little bit, it would make their lives so much better. So at least a quarter of what we put into Brightspace comes from that pie and that feedback we get from customers. Really important to us. So when we build an LMS, we try to think of it as more than what you just consider and expect from an LMS. Where you don't need to go and buy another system if you're trying to build out some mastery-based or project-based learning. If you're trying to think about how do I support adult learning and non-credit programs or workforce partnerships, Brightspace has a lot of the capabilities built in to do registration, to do e-commerce around that, to credential around badging and levels around those if necessary. So we try to meet customers where they are. We try to help them move from just digitizing what they're doing in the classroom to really trying to use some of the automation and optimization capabilities of our platform. And then ultimately to think about how do they transform a more learner-centric experience, one that's more optimized towards achieving mastery and outcomes rather than grades and performance measures that way. There you go. Accessibility is something that is absolutely fundamental to our company culture and how we think about building a platform and supporting our customers. So we really strongly believe that not only is the technology that we provide need to be accessible, but the content that gets created in Brightspace needs to be accessible. It needs to be accessible in that it can be read on a screen reader. It needs to be accessible so that it can be viewed on any device that someone might happen to be using, even if they can't download an app, for example. And it needs to be accessible in that individuals from different backgrounds, different levels of interest, different capabilities in engaging with their learning environment can still be met where they are and can still be reached as an individual. And those things are hard in a one size kind of fits all model, but in technology that can help orchestrate and allow for scale in personalizing an experience, a learning path, recognition of progress, it really unlocks a lot of great opportunities to improve learning experience. So one of the ways we try to support accessibility is by ensuring Brightspace is responsive, meaning that regardless of what screen you access Brightspace from, all of the capabilities of the application are going to work. So I can do anything on an LMS on an old iPod Touch that I can do on a full desktop screen. I don't need a native app to download to do that. Everybody has access to that. So we're not putting any barriers in place for anybody that wants to access their learning, nor are we creating some inequalities in the experience if there are things I can do on a newer device and one that can download apps and one that cannot. Ultimately, though, we know that learners really take advantage of having some screen real estate on their phone, getting things like nudges when there are updates that are coming due. We try to help support executive function for learners and help them visualize what work is actually happening across all of the different courses that they might be taking. We find in our research that gets lost in the shuffle sometimes. You can get a myopic view of different courses and work that you might have, but it's hard to see the forest for the trees and know that, maybe next week there's a midterm that's coming up and I want to see what I need to do to plan for this week, the week before, to be prepared for that. So really looking at the types of struggles and obstacles that learners face and where in building our product and in designing our product and our apps, how can we support some of those things? And in this case, visualizing what work there is to do and some of that executive function that comes with planning my success. Similarly, we try to support reducing the cognitive load that learners have to take on when they access the environment. So one of the ways we do that is templates. So content can be branded, if you want to have it branded to a specific department or program or just the school itself, awesome, do that. But then lay out your information in a way that's very consistent. If learners are always going to be looking at a module introduction, they can scan if it's in a template. They know where to find that key information. They're not having to take on more cognitive load, more stress in finding out the key information. They know how to scan for that and they can focus on the content at hand. They can focus on bringing themselves into how they show their knowledge, their skills, abilities. The other great thing about having templates in place is these are responsive as well. These are accessible. So I know I can create really dynamic, engaging, modern looking content. And if someone looks at it on a screen, it's not going to be that horrible pinch and zoom that you get with an Office document. If somebody goes and accesses this on a screen reader, I know they're going to be able to actually utilize that. I don't have to go through a bunch of hoops to correct things after the fact. So overall, we really think about how do we design the system and the tools that we have so we can put students first. We create a number of different ways to give really meaningful feedback. So we have video interaction tools with some machine learning that gives me feedback on my rated speech, the number of times I use We have great feedback tools for a teacher so they can see all of the areas they need to give feedback across all their courses to try to shorten that feedback. And then we have lots of tools like rubrics, video all throughout to try to give really authentic and personalized feedback. We want to make sure learners can be motivated. So we have lots of ways to recognize progress automatically as they move through the environment and to encourage them with enrichment type activities, remediation materials, or even to auto-assign them into groups where they can mentor others if they show proficiency. We try to give them lots of opportunities for active learning, where they can engage with a portfolio that's built within Brightspace. They can add their own voice in with rich content tools, video throughout. And there's a sense of being able to support personalization and more adaptive learning in that Brightspace supports a rules-based approach to how you release materials to individuals based on how well they do, a choice that they might make, or group information that they might have about where they might go next. So everything within Brightspace, the communications that go out to learners, the content or the activities that are made available to them are based upon rules. So I can use an if this, then that kind of mindset for how I lay out and organize and orchestrate that student learning experience. So we see our customers do that for things like choose your own adventure. You know, you may have a checklist of how do I want to demonstrate that I've really mastered this content. Based on what I select, that's what the rest of my activity looks like. And so really great views for both the learner and the instructor at what is an individual's path towards mastery and what are all the different ways that they're interacting with this learning objective or this competency, and how can I help to support and recognize that growth for an individual over time. Really cool thing about having all these rules is I might have a completely different path I take towards that mastery than another learner. But what's important is we've demonstrated that level of knowledge, that mastery, and we've done it in a way that gives us a little bit of freedom. Brightspace has been historically incredibly involved in the standards community, and particularly within IMS. So you'll see us getting certified across IMS specifications on a regular basis to keep those up to date. Really, our goal there is to make sure that educators that are working with Brightspace can use the tools that they love. So whether that's looking at TopHat, whether that's looking at Bongo, Zoom, and others, Microsoft Teams, we want to ensure that there's as little friction as possible in educators making choices on the types of tools they want to use, and IT staff knowing that they've de-risked and built in the governance that they need to, both in terms of access to data, prevention of personal information disclosures, things like that. For organizations that go a little bit above and beyond and they want more than the basic data and analytics that we provide, we do have advanced options we call Performance Plus. So this is where we've built out some really robust dashboards that can be deployed out to success coaches, deans, advisors, and that help them really understand what are some of the risk factors that are emerging from learners that are underengaged or underperforming. We can look at things like assessment quality, so we can understand and calibrate how well are we actually evaluating what we think we're evaluating, and where are there some assessment instruments that might require some work, and here are some of the flags for those. And we provide a really robust do-it-yourself reporting engine there. So for organizations that have really complex stakeholder requirements, they can bring together data from multiple different learning apps and organize that in a way that's meaningful for those stakeholders. Outside of what D2L does with Brightspace, we actually have another platform that we've just recently launched called V12 Wave. And so what D12 Wave does is it's something that we position within a corporation, and that corporation can organize a bunch of a catalog for their employees that helps them discover learning opportunities through qualified, credentialed institutions. And employees can choose to take learning, get it approved, have the organizational budget deployed, and get enrolled into a higher education course, all through D12 Wave. So it's a way of building out an additional channel and discovering new learners for higher education organizations that are looking for ways to connect in with companies and to connect in with that conversation around reskilling and upskilling the workforce. So D12 Wave is another totally different way that we start to partner with organizations and help them look at delivering learning programs that are really modern, future-proof, and delivered at the types of audience that are really looking for that today. So for Wave, we look at that as a bridge between corporations trying to upskill and reskill, and institutions that have great curriculum, great programs that they've redeveloped or they're thinking about redeveloping to be focused on a more professional development and skilling conversation. Okay, that's all I wanted to show. I'm at my 15 minutes. I know we've got a little bit of extra time for questions, but it's plenty of time for TopHat too. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ken. We did have one question. I threw it in the chat here. Have there been any studies done for this tool to see if there is any difference between how learners access their results? Specifically, the question asker is interested to see if this platform increases the ability of mobile learners, for instance, to perform.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting question. We've done some development work really recently. I think it's releasing this month, if not next, where we've kind of built in a little bit more telemetry into our usage stats, so we can actually look at that question specifically. So no, I don't have any insights or answers from that, but yes, that's a question we're exploring right now.
Great, thanks. All right, so if you joined us just into that, you're at the sponsored speed dating. Thank you very much, Ken Chapman from Desire to Learn. We do have a little bit of time padded at the end of this session, so we'll have a little bit more time for questions and answers. If you do have a question for Ken, go ahead and drop it in the live Q&A. I'll take a look at that, and after TopHat is done, we'll get through as many of those questions as we can in our time. So thank you, Ken. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jay Meloff from TopHat and John Talbot from Indiana University to talk a little bit more about TopHat.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Brad. So I'm going to get started here and share my screen with you all. I'm sure that a lot of the people here today, I can't see your names on screen right now. You've probably seen an email from me at some point or heard my name. Maybe some people might even know me. If that's the case, it's nice to not see you, but know you're here. And so for today, it's just myself and the gentleman you see on screen here, John Talbot. We have been a known entity with Unizin and the Unizin members for quite some time now. So in thinking about how we wanted to go about this session today, we didn't want to do a demo or show you, something that you've seen before or heard before from us. What we thought might be much more valuable today for everyone here is to hear it right from somebody who is using TopHat and really using TopHat in the full scope of what you would have heard from us, where TopHat is a platform that can be used to keep students engaged before, during, and after class, as is our belief. So with that, I'm going to get out of the way here because I'm just the salesperson, and I'm going to hand it over to John to introduce himself and take you all through his experience using TopHat, what he's liked about the experience, what he's found helpful, and what it does for his class. So John, I'll hand that over to you, and I'll just sit here.
Thank you, Jay, and my apologies if there's background noise. I'm traveling today and was supposed to be my hotel room by now, but I'm not. So I'm in a lobby and might be a little extraneous noise. So my apologies if that comes across. But I've been using TopHat for, I'm going to say 8 years now, 7 or 8 years. And it was originally introduced, I utilized classroom response devices that many of us would know as clickers, probably 14 years ago when I first came back to teach. I'm a business person and I teach in the Kelley School of Business, as you can see from the chart or the slide that Jay has shown. And so I was interested in the idea of student response from the very beginning of my teaching, and that was anchored really in coming back and realizing there's science around teaching, and there's good and bad ways to teach. And shockingly, I found out that many of my colleagues had never been to any sort of a training course that was put on by Scholarship of Teaching and Learning or CITL or anything like that. And I felt like, wow, what an opportunity to try to use technology in ways that can improve student engagement. So I used Turning Technologies years ago, and I was a fan, but frankly, I think the technology was ahead of its time. And I quit using it for a fairly extensive period of time, I'd say 7 or 8 years. And then one of my colleagues introduced TopHat primarily as a classroom response system, similar to what we had with Turning Point, but utilizing a cloud-based interface and Wi-Fi instead of near-field communications or whatever the mechanism was that allowed for the clickers to work. So adopted that in a course, and as I began to engage with the tool I really liked some of the functionality that my colleague had not really deployed, and that included being able to take my slide decks, embed them within the tool, have my students be able to not only see and interact with that slide deck, but see my annotations on their screens at the same time that I was doing it. Also really liked the ability to embed questions to assess in-class learning at the time. And so, yeah, truthfully, I think even TopHat was a bit ahead of their time in terms of the ubiquity of Wi-Fi technology and really robust connectivity throughout schools. And it was glitchy. There were some problems early on, but it got better and it continues to do so. And over the last 3 years, I use TopHat exclusively in all my courses. I treat it as an LMS. I don't really use, we have Canvas at Indiana University, and I hope nobody at the faculty level, I mean, at the dean's level is listening, but I'm not really using Canvas in my classes because I find it to be redundant and it requires more work on my part to have to populate information in 2 different locations. So basically I've ported all of my classes onto TopHat, and I use it for distributing information before. I use it during class to allow for student interaction and feedback. And then I post assignments, questions, readings, other things after class, videos. We have a textbook that we deployed in their platform about 3 years ago. It has about 1,600 users per year. I constructed that text with the collaboration of about 6 other colleagues. And I can tell you, from ease, the ease of doing that now is much better than it was 4 years ago when I first developed it. It was a learning curve, I think, for TopHat at that point, and certainly for me as well. But the outcome is really good. I have 6 faculty members that honestly were pretty happy with me last year because they got a nice little stipend for their work in developing a text that is current, that we can constantly adapt, that has the ability to engage students offline when they're preparing for class, and then works well with our slides during the course. And so, over the years, I've become, I don't know if I'd say a big fan, but I'm trying to make my life easier and my students' lives easier. And sometimes I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't like it because sometimes I'm teaching seniors, and this is the first time that a course has been deployed on TopHat for them. And whenever you change directions on students, they sometimes get a little upset. But I also think students need to be able to adapt to technology rapidly, or they're going to fail, in the jobs they get after school. And so asking them to migrate over to what I think is a better platform for learning, I don't think it's too big of an ask in order to get the outcome to occur. So happy to help anyone that might be on the call in terms of questions and answers. I feel like I've known TopHat probably longer than Jay. So at any rate, that's it for me. I just love to open the floor for questions or anything.
Thank you, John. Yeah, and I think for the record, I think we started both with TopHat right around the same time. So
did we?
Yeah, right around around the same time. Based
yeah, but
on
you get paid and I
history.
don't. That's a difference.
Yeah. But yeah, so if there's questions at all, John and I talked about this ahead of time, and we thought this would be a really great opportunity to ask questions that, normally if you ask me or someone else from TopHat, a staff member, it's one thing to get an answer from us, but this is an opportunity to ask John directly what he thinks. And, for instance, I'm sure understanding more about why, you know, I do all this stuff in Canvas versus, or in TopHat versus Canvas. You know, like things like that. Not to say that TopHat does not work with Canvas, because it does integrate with Canvas fully, and its TopHat is an extension of that. So if there's any questions at all, we're happy to, again, I'm happy to shut up and let John answer them and give you his thoughts as somebody who actually uses TopHat. And like he said, has seen it through a time when Wi-Fi was not good, iPhones were not, and Samsung phones and Android phones were not what they are today. So it's a unique question opportunity.
One thing I'll just throw in, Jay, is that in discussion with some of my colleagues, I found many of my colleagues don't like to have laptops or any sort of computer device open in the classroom. And I've always found, just to me, it seems like you're putting a finger in the dike and trying to prevent water from going downhill. That the reality is that, you know, the students, if they don't have the devices, they're missing the opportunity to find information that could be interesting in the class. So in my classes, I often ask them to go out and seek an answer to a question and see if they can find it. So I think one of the things that anyone that's, you know, considering an engaged classroom using digital technology, you've just got to be open to the fact that, you know, kids are going to have their devices, and those devices in theory can be tuned to the right thing or to something else. But I think my goal is that they find the material so interesting that they choose my stuff. And I think TopHat helps me do that. And that I believe in an engaged classroom. And if kids can get the answer on Google, then maybe we're teaching the wrong stuff. So yeah, we don't need to teach them how to use that. They already are pretty good at it.
That's, yeah, well said. Getting students to lean in, I think, is to their own education is super important.
I see a question that Brad's posted on benefit of TopHat over Canvas. So primarily it's the way that I can utilize TopHat both offline for assessment, but also in the classroom, and also just trying to reduce redundancy. You know, for me, I could probably, I have built classes with a degree of interactivity in Canvas as well. And you can choose to do one or the other, but what I didn't like is having to populate data in two places and being sure that it's correct. The other thing I will say is I've found that mapping a previous year's course over to the next year in TopHat is easier to do than in Canvas. And so the links work better. I don't find as many, you know, broken aspects to it. So I've gotten used to TopHat as my means for deployment. And I like the fact that it can support really any component of the student engagement pre-class with videos, other information that they're engaging with, and assessment, low stakes, in class, low stakes assessment with my slides and questions embedded, and then post that, maybe a follow-up of how things have worked. So part of it's just, I don't know that, I think you can do fine with either one, but you certainly don't want to use both because you're just wasting your time and effort. And, you know, I don't know how you all feel, but grading, building classes is hard. It takes a long amount of time. And so I like to make my life as pain-free as possible. And this is just what has worked for me.
We did get another question there too.
I see that, to be helpful high course engagement. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And you know, the person that had the previous question of why TopHat, I think for hybrid, it's a much better solution because I can post questions in a physical classroom and also get them pushed out to students that might be at distance. And I don't know about the rest of y'all that are in education, but you know, the last 2.5 years, there's been so much, you know, having to allow students to commit to the course where they are. Some of them are sick. They've had other issues. I've tried to make it as easy as possible for them to, if they can't come to class, they can answer the TopHat questions. They could even, when I'm posting those questions, if I don't use the geolocation and don't shut that down, they can answer the questions from their dorm room and still be engaged with the course. So yeah, I do think for hybrid, it's a really good tool. I used it. We have a direct MBA program, and I started using TopHat in that 4 or 5 years ago, before COVID and everything, and found that it was a great way to allow students to feel more engaged, because campus has that, but for me personally, I just didn't find the functionality as easy to use.
And there are a couple more in here for you,
Yep.
John. I'll
So-
throw them in the chat for you.
Yeah, I found fewer and fewer. So first of all, Indiana has an enterprise license. So our students all have TopHat when they come in. So if I load a course, it's available to them in TopHat. It doesn't cost them any additional amount of money. And I think TopHat will even tell you that their research shows that that's when students are turned off by TopHat, it's primarily because of that. It's because they don't like having to pay an extra fee. And in cases where the institution takes care of that and provides this tool for the students and the teaching group, the faculty, then it works. It's more effective. I've also had less and less problems with Wi-Fi. It just doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. We had, I think Jay knows, we have a class that had 1,600 students in it that we populate, and we did some live Zoom sessions with TopHat in the background. And I will tell you, there was a little bit of latency involved with that. I know they're working to probably try to fix that, but it was there was visual dialogue going on, and questions, and some of the question formats, I think my colleagues may have not made the best choices. I think they created questions that were very heavy in terms of load onto the systems, like word clouds with 1,600 people don't work very well. So don't do that. Yeah, so I've had less and less on the pain side of it. I think mostly it's getting your institution to adopt it. The pain points are if your students get upset because they're having to, create and pay an additional fee for something that is exclusive to maybe your class or a few others.
I think the next one's probably me to answer.
Way beyond my scope.
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
But just to tag on to what John just said though as well, as a company, we are very invested now strategically in trying to help alleviate student costs, much more than we always have been, but much more than before. As some of the sessions, I think one of the sessions that's happening later today is discussing some of the work we've been doing. So that's something we're very interested in exploring, and we're very creative with it. But for this question around the UDP, so this is ongoing work for TopHat, product work. And Brad, you can keep me honest on this, but I believe right now, what we're shipping and what is going into the UDP is attendance data, test data, and there's one more piece of data that's escaping me right now for some reason that is feeding into the UDP. However, getting more of what TopHat has into the UDP is something that we want to do and are interested in doing. The extent of data that TopHat has is pretty extensive. So literally everything from amount of times a student logs out during a class session, how long they spend on an individual question, not just how they did on the question. Did they change their answer after they submitted it? There's a lot of data that TopHat has that can be provided, that is available there. It's just being able to use it. I think the work we just did was around and finished, I think, late last fall or in the fall was being able to contextualize that data. And again, Brad, you can keep me honest, but I think there's 3 data points that are going into the UDP that are caliperized right now. And it's attendance testing. And there's one other thing that for some reason, my brain is just not grabbing it. But whoever does have that question, please jump into the booth later, and I'm happy to track down answers for that and talk about that more. Data is everything right now. I'll fade into the background again, John. Another question for you there.
I see how responsive do you find the development of TopHat platform outside of textbooks? Pretty good. I don't think anything's fast enough. I think they've dealt with probably the most important issues, which are stability, bandwidth, non-failure in the classroom. Some of the functionality for me, I would prefer it to adjust a bit, and I think they're working on that. But I think you got to make sure the boat floats before you add some fancy engines and other things like that. Now the boat's floated for a while. I don't mean to sound like it's that simple, but some of the things that I'm thinking about is if anybody uses TopHat out there, if you look in the left nav bar where the students see it, I don't see enough ability to create headers, really sort of structure the content in a way that looks more like a traditional textbook. So I think they're working on that. I think the grade book has been in need of some improvement, and I think they're working on that as well. We have one class that, as I indicated, we have 1,800 students in it. It's all low stakes assessment in it. And I was telling Jay that we have 260,000 data points in that class. And so you can sort of scan across and see how students are doing. But I do think it lends itself probably to some sort of a statistical cluster analysis or some sort of a crawl with an AI to really, develop sort of a segmentation approach of understanding how different student groups are engaged. But as far as, compared to some things, quite responsive, and nothing's perfect. They're not Amazon. They're not the next day delivery yet, but not bad.
We're close. We're trying our best. To your point about stability as well, was a lot of the product work that went in last year was around that. We actually completely, revamped our infrastructure of TopHat to be able to support some of the things that needed to happen. And now we're getting there with those, like an administrator role this fall, things like that. So just to allow these things that everyone has wanted, we've had to basically rebuild the plane as we're flying it. As far as streamlining of data across multiple semesters, I'm not sure if this is a question for John as an individual instructor, but in general, it's fairly easy. It's going to be easier this fall and going forward. So right now, if you wanted to get a data set, there's 2 routes you can go. Like I said, there's a few things that you can get through the UDP or gradebook, things like that. But we can submit a request to our analytics team, get you that comparison as many semesters as you want. We can go right back until like 2013 or earlier.
Jay, it's also, I can do that myself too. I have the ability to download a CSV for any of my courses. And the thing is you just got to do the work and crunch on it, right? That's the thing I have not, frankly, done. And probably something that I need to do, and something I'm thinking about is really trying to do more with examining the data that I'm getting in the gradebook, because I think it would be very interesting. So it's easy to extract and then to load it into some sort of statistical analysis tool if you wanted to. This might be better for you, Jay. Creative. I think what we did, honestly, is the most creative thing I've ever seen. Like putting 1,600 students on it 1 year before the pandemic seems like genius.
And then, well,
but it was dumb luck.
Well, I don't think it was dumb luck. I think it was effort. But I think what was impressive most about that is soldiering on through the pandemic and the challenges that came with it, and then having that be successful. It's not necessarily, you know, it's just that is a good thing to point to. As far as like pure creativity of using TopHat though, depends on the day you ask me. I've seen some cool things. I've seen Twitter embedded in textbooks, Instagram I've seen hashtagging Instagram assignments for anthropologists. Really cool creative things you can do because of what, you know, TopHat allows the devices for you to use, and how you can iframe things into the textbook really easily or different places. I've seen a lot with that. I'd have to sit down and think about it. I've seen a lot of courses and different structures in my time, but that's probably my favorite from a pure creativity standpoint of using social media within a TopHat textbook to encourage students to get out into the world and do research, and then use social media to tag their assignments and pieces of it, all within one place. So it's pretty cool. There's other things, like I said, but if you give me time to think, we might have to extend this for another couple hours. But yeah, that's the one that comes to mind. And Ken, there's a question that's here. I'll stop talking. We've been talking a lot, so we're close to time here, so I'll zip it now.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, in terms of statistics for how we actualize those PI requests or product idea exchange, I don't know how many. I don't know what it is in terms of a percentage, but over last year at least, it was just under 120 new features that we had released over the 12 months, so about 10 a month. But what's important for us as we prioritize those is really what's the context that's embedded in those asks, and how much are other people upvoting those things, so that we know, you know, what kind of impact does this have. So, you know, the 120 features is about 2,500 votes around those features. So it helps us understand things like, you know, things that we might not have actually launched, like printing out rubrics. You know, when we're building out software, we're not always thinking about cutting trees down in the process and printing, but it was a workflow that so many educators were looking for, that we wanted to be responsive to. When the pandemic happened, we have a tool that's built within Brightspace. Anywhere you give feedback or an introduction, or anywhere you can just type stuff, you can insert a video note. Just take a little video with your phone or your laptop camera, whatever. But it was always limited to 3 minutes. And when the pandemic hit, immediately we were finding people were creating a lot longer form video. And so they told us through our product ideas exchange, I need those videos to be longer, and I need you to figure out a way to auto caption those for us, because that's really hard for us, and we're not going to upload SRT files, and we need it to be accessible. So we did that. And that was great. Like, that's the kind of thing that the community told us, this would really impact how well we can put great things in front of our students and meet their needs. So it's a wonderful mechanism for us to calibrate some of those ankle biters and big impact capabilities. I'll mention just a creative use that I've seen. Oh, there's another question here. What's the best feature of D2L and the one that would convince institutions to use D2L over another LMS like Canvas? Right, not to fuel rivalries. I think really it's the level of future-proofing that we've built into the actual architecture and the platform itself. We never built an LMS to take what was happening in the classroom and put it online. We built an LMS that was really centered around the things that we found weren't practical and really possible to do at scale. So what inspired us as an organization that built out a platform was universal design for learning. How can we actually design and develop learning programs where we can meet individuals where they are? They have multiple ways that they can interact with materials, multiple ways they can demonstrate what they know, and to engage with the environment. So the thing I would say that's really different about D2L is the level of expertise that we bring in helping to understand the right ways to utilize technology to meet your learning goals. And the second would be the flexibility to deliver a really wide variety of learning programs, not just your typical courseware and blended and hybrid courses, but mastery-based, competency-based education, adult learning programs, stackable credentials. Those are things that are kind of in our DNA as we built out the architecture over the years.
Great, thank you, Ken. That is all the questions I have in the queue. So I'll take that as a prompt maybe to wrap this up. As I do that, thank you very much, Desire to Learn. Thank you very much, TopHat, for being builder level sponsors of the Unizin Summit. Appreciate it very much. Your support allows us to do this sort of thing, to do it for free, and to do it for hundreds of people who are interested in seeing and hearing what's going on around the Unizin consortium and the ecosystem. So thank you very, very much. John, as well, thank you for your expertise and how you use TopHat. It was glorious to hear about that. So for all of our attendees, if you have more questions and you didn't get them in time, please do check out the sponsor pages in the attendee hub. There's an opportunity to schedule some time to visit with the folks from both of these organizations. So I will say that's it. Thank you very much. Everyone enjoy the rest of the summit. More sessions today, and of course, more sessions starting at noon Eastern on Thursday. So thank you all. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Brad. See you, Kenneth.
Thank you.
Bye, Jay.
Bye.
See you, John.